Hey guys, so today is June 21st. June 21st. This is we're halfway through 2021, and yet we are still talking about January 6th. And January 6th, as you probably remember, is when the Republican Party stormed the Capitol building, caused an insurrection, as they put it, and completely dismantled our democracy as we know it. They totally turned the tables on the order of business and how we should be conducting ourselves. Most of what the media tells you, most of what I've read this morning on CNN, they have a huge headline for it, and different opinions and views from different people based on the things that you read and that I read and that I watched. It's just not true. It's just not true. We've mentioned this before on here that I don't agree with what happened. I don't believe it did any good. It definitely rattled the cages of people and of situations and brought things to light. Maybe not necessarily for the good of us. But why are we talking about it like this and neglecting other things? And so if we go from January 6th and we go back to June, July, summer of 2020, and we look at some of the actual violent activities that happened, we don't talk about those anymore. Those are gone, those are over with, those are in the past. Why is this not over and gone and in the past? Why is it? Well, again, this is full. I was cringing at some of the things it was saying when it talks about our former president, Donald Trump, and the things that he did, things that he said, the attacks that he made on the media outlets, calling them fake news and calling them lies. They didn't like the attacks on them because it affected them. And most of the time it was true. I mean, let's just look again at the Dr. Fauci incidents that have been revealed. You don't hear much about this on most media outlets, but you hear it from private organizations and very few conservative outlets. The Fauci emails that have come out and his opinions regarding masks and vaccines and the whereabouts of the virus and where it originated from. Everything that he told us in public contradicted everything that he told people in private. You can't tell me that's not a lie and that there's no problem with that. I would strongly encourage you to go on. I don't usually promote bad outlets, but check out CNN and read some of these stories, and again, take it with a grain of salt. And I would encourage you to always look at different sources. One of my personal favorites is Fox News and a site called Newsmax. I like those two. I think they're very good. But it's just, again, it has one objective, it has one goal, and that's to paint the conservative side as bad, and to paint the liberal democratic side as good. Again, I don't want to be oblivious to the idea that you could say, well, that's what we're trying to do right now. We're trying to paint the democratic side as bad and the conservative side as good. But again, it kind of goes back to what we talked about last time. What's the foundation for our premise, and what are we making our decisions based on? And that's it. For me, it's one thing. It's based on biblical aspects and morals. And those are two things that everything, in my opinion, has to hinge on. If we don't have morals of any kind, whether it's biblically based or not, then nothing can last. Nothing can last. If CNN has zero morals, then what do they base their opinions on? What do they base their facts on? Typically, I would say that falls on money and power, which is not what we want from our leadership. So apparently more things that the GOP is doing wrong. So CNN writes about these voting rights that they are trying to push. And this is what CNN writes. Republicans justify their plan to block sweeping voting right legislation in the Senate this week by arguing that it's a huge federal power grab. But their past words and actions suggest they are again prioritizing their own political advantage over defending democracy. When former President Donald Trump lost last year's election, most Republicans didn't do what most losing parties do: agonize over how to modify their message and appeal to a majority to deliver them future power. So let's stop right there for a second. Whenever I think about leadership, when I think about decisions that need to be made, I would say I lean more to the side of I don't want someone to agonize over how to modify their message and appeal to a majority to deliver them future power. I want to lean more to the side that I don't want that. I don't want someone who's in power and who's in leadership that has to change their direction and who they are and what they believe in order to appeal to a majority. And that idea of appealing to them is, well, I'm not really going to behave that way and believe that way. I'm just going to appeal to them. I'm going to put on this front for them to win their votes and to win this election. That's not what I want. If I'm running for something and I believe that what my ideas and opinions are accurate, then I'm going to, for the most part, stick with that. I'm going to stick with that. Yes, I will be open to ideas and suggestions, and it may the idea may widen a little bit, but I'm not going to completely turn the tables on something. I'm not going to completely, again, disregard my morals and my beliefs to appease and appeal to someone else. I don't want that. I don't want that from myself or for anyone in leadership. So instead, the party leaders, the Republican Party in Washington and the states, dedicated themselves to enshrining his anti-democratic behavior as GOP orthodoxy and whitewashing events that led to Trump's disgrace, including his pandemic failures, lies about non-existent major electoral fraud, and the Capitol insurrection. So again, pandemic failures. If Donald Trump failed with the pandemic, then I also want to say that Joe Biden is failing with the pandemic. Donald Trump did more to get the vaccine out than Biden did. For the people who are interested in that, Donald Trump had huge pushbacks with not shutting down the country from the liberal side. What do you want to hear? If the things that Donald Trump did were so bad, then why did Biden not do the opposite? Why were we still struggling to open up? Why were we still struggling with different aspects of the pandemic? No, Biden's only solution is to throw more money at the problem. Again, unless you have your head in the sand, you can see that there were some problems with the electoral votes, and some of the things just didn't seem right. And again, we didn't hear much about that from most media outlets. We didn't hear about them because they didn't fit the narrative that they had going on. ABC News chimes in about this voting act. This week, Senate Democrats will try to pass a voting rights overhaul that President Joe Biden has identified as critical to his agenda. And that gives me goosebumps right there. For two reasons. Critical to his agenda. Why is it critical to your agenda? What is your agenda, and why does this play such a huge part? Now, that's number one. Number two is, why is voting rights so critical to anything? Why is it so important? We have done fairly well, I would say, in my opinion, as a nation, on voting forever. Why is it critical now to change how we do something and what we do? Why? The outcome is virtually preordained, with only 49 Democrats and not a single Republican expected to support the For the People's Act, a version of which has already passed the House. So kudos to the Republicans for that. So what is the For the People's Act? Well, there's a couple of points I was going to pull out. This is from Congress.gov. The bill addresses voter access, election integrity and security, campaign finance, and ethics for 3 branches of government. Okay, well, that sounds good. It does sound good. But again, when we look back at 2020, it didn't seem like there was much of this being upheld. The ethics and integrity. Is it going to be upheld for both sides, or is it just going to be upheld for what you want? And it goes on specifically. The bill expands voter registration, for example, automatic and same-day registration, and voting access, for example, vote by mail and early voting. It also limits removing voters from voter rolls. So again, even if the liberal side doesn't intend on this being used for evil, even if they don't intend for that, they really just intend for people to have better access and making it easier for them. Assuming that. The problem still lies, though, that if you give people the opportunity to act without integrity, some people will. Not most, I don't believe, but some people will. If you give people a way to cheat, to steal, to destroy, if you give them an easy way to do it, they will take it. That's why we don't open up the gates for that. That's why we don't open the door for that. We try to restrict things, especially when it comes to voting, and voting is something that, even more so nowadays, is so critical and crucial to our nation. At least in my sight, because I haven't really cared about this much in the past, but with the decisions and the direction we're going, man, it just seems like it is so important on what we do and how we do it. So let's take a look at another issue that might have stemmed from the aggressive shutdown that we're still in. And I told my dad the other day, I think we're going to be feeling the effects of this pandemic for many months, maybe many years. It's crazy how much it is affecting us. But NBC News has an article on schooling, on virtual learning, and this is what their headline says: Remote learning a bust? Some families consider having their child repeat kindergarten. And it's sad to think that for children, for anybody, that we have, as a society, just completely given up a year of our life. That we have just thrown it out and nothing really came from it. I know not everything, but it's been an overhaul. It's been potentially destructive for some people. You're not going to hear about that too often because, again, depending on who the shutdown came from, depending on whose fault it was, you may hear a little more about it. But right now we have a different president in office. And so we're going to hear more good things that are coming from the things that we did and are doing versus negative. But of course, why would the children get more out of virtual learning when we just completely uproot young people, young people, from what they normally know to do, which is going to school with their friends, socializing, having those interactions, to just being at home by yourself, staring at a screen, potentially being monitored by your parents when they have obligations that they have to worry about. And I would even go as far as to say that unless a parent is desiring to homeschool and has that mentality that I'm ready for this, then the parents who have that sprung on them that, hey, you're going to homeschool now, well, they're going to be a little different than the ones who prepared mentally for it. They're not going to be ready for that. They didn't want to do that. That's why they have them in public school or private school, just not homeschool. They mentally weren't prepared for that. And it's going to take a little bit of a toll on them versus someone who has. I mean, is it any wonder that they're going to be affected by it just as much as adults are? With the online learning, we may see more of this. So MSNBC has an opinion on cyberbullying. And this reflects on a lady named Chrissy Teigen. And she's been in the media here lately for different posts, past posts that she's sent out to people, and different comments she's made. And the comments she's made are not good. Are not good. I mean, this is cyberbullying at its finest, and it's stirred on problems for the people, the recipients of these messages and comments, things such as depression and even suicidal thoughts. It baffles me to see what's written down here from MSNBC. When I was reading through it, sure, I can see a few things that they talk about that, okay, that's got a little bit of meat to it. I can see that. I can go with that. But there's other things that I can't. So while it's absolutely true that social media platforms like Twitter and Instagram have become a magnifying glass for people's mistakes, especially when a celebrity like Teigen is involved, we risk forgetting that we're all characters in the story too. So what do they mean? Well, what I gather is that we're all human. We all make mistakes, which is absolutely true. We all do things that we may regret. I don't know if she regrets this or not. Teigen's hateful behavior is unsettling, but if we remove her from the headlines, what we're really forced to look at is ourselves. Well, I mean, I don't know about you, but I haven't personally sent destructive messages to anybody with one objective, and one objective only, is to destroy them, to completely wreck their life and the people who may or may not see this, to cause them emotional and mental stress. I've never done that. So if I remove her and I look at myself, I'm not going to see that. I'm not going to see that. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I'm not going to see that. By keeping our attention trained on Teigen, we conveniently erase ourselves from the narrative. We become absolved of any responsibility when we entertain the myth of the irreproachable specter of bullying. Americans have long been trained to see the deficiencies of people rather than policy, he writes. It's pretty easy to make it's a pretty easy mistake to make. People are in our faces, policies are distant. Canceling a racist person, whatever that means, that's funny, doesn't end racism. The same goes with any social problem, including online bullying and harassment. Again, MSNBC is a very liberal media outlet. How in the world can they say this? How in the world can they say canceling a racist person, whatever that means? What? I mean, this is again the same party, the same people who are proclaiming everything's racist. Everything's racist. If it comes out of a white person's mouth, it's probably racist. That's what they say. Canceling a racist person, whatever that means, doesn't end racism. I agree. Taking a factor out of the problem doesn't take the problem away. I get that. But I also will go and say that we shouldn't magnify like we're doing and keep the person's name elevated. I mean, it's not always true, but I would say majority of the time it's true that any publicity is good publicity for someone of importance, someone who has a name. It's not always true, but I think majority of the time it is true. And that's what we're doing when we do things like this. But yes, I definitely agree that taking situations out of problems doesn't take the problem away. But I think it helps. I think it absolutely helps. Making Tegan disappear won't eradicate bullying. Of course not. It may actually worsen it because it reinforces the idea that in order to be liked, you need to be perfect. No, it doesn't. Or that in order to be accepted, you need to hide what makes you human. Banishing Tegan from the social media universe might give us something to do right now, but a much more effective solution would be to pressure social media companies to take online harassment seriously and create smarter technology to stamp it out. But are they going to stamp it out for everybody? Are they going to monitor one person as harshly as they monitor another? As we saw with our sitting president at the time, Facebook has powers that they should not have when it comes to silencing who they want to silence. It's so much easier to magnify the mistakes of others instead of looking at ourselves, because most of the time, what we hate the most in other people is often what we most fear about ourselves. And that's just not true. Sure, you could spin that to make it true in some situations. And hate's a strong word. I don't like that word from a Christian perspective. It's so much easier to magnify the mistakes of others instead of looking at ourselves, because most of the time, what we hate the most in other people, what I dislike the most in Chrissy Teigen, is the fact that she would do that. I don't like that. I don't like that she would want to destroy someone else. I don't like that about her. But I don't fear that about myself, trying to destroy someone else. I don't see any reason why I would ever go on a social media platform or in person and have one mission to completely destroy them with my words. It's one thing to do it in person, which is bad. It's even worse to do it online. And why is that? Because you've typed it out. You've had time to think about it. You are mentally processing it. You have to hit send to confirm it. I mean, you have so many opportunities to see that and say, I better not do that. I don't want to do that. Do that. Delete. But it went out anyways. But enough with the negative notes, the negative headlines. There's one more I was going to get to, and that's a Supreme Court decision that was made. And I don't know if you've heard talks of it regarding the same-sex adoption rights that have been presented. And again, this is what MSNBC wrote about: the latest chapter in a battle between two freedoms, the freedom for religious rights and the freedom from discrimination. Again, we've got to hit these things together. We got to hit them against each other. There is no relationship between them, between religious freedom and discrimination. It was written by the Supreme Court on Thursday, and it is not favorable to those advocating for a stronger anti-discrimination law. In essence, in America today, governments can be forced to work with religious institutions that discriminate against gay and lesbian couples. The Catholic Social Services is a religious agency that contracts with the city of Philadelphia to help place children with foster families based on its religious beliefs. CSS refuses to certify same-sex couples as foster parents. Way to go, Catholic Services. Way to go. Way to go, Supreme Court. That is fantastic. And it's fantastic, and it's shocking, actually. It's really surprising to see that, because if my knowledge is right, there's 4 Republican parties on the Supreme Court and 5 Democrat. The number could be swapped, but regardless, it was a 9-0 vote, which is baffling. Actually, it's crazy, but it's upholding the religious freedom. It's upholding the foundations that I desire for our nation to once again hold on to. Sure, I am against discrimination. Yes, I am. But not at the cost of my biblical beliefs and being able to build up on a biblical foundation. If those two things are in the scale, biblical beliefs, moral beliefs, and discrimination, well, I'm going to hold on to this, and I will choose to discriminate. That's the hard time we get into. That's the hard topic that we as a nation don't agree on. We can't find that even footing. We can't find that unity, because not everybody has morals. Not everybody has biblical beliefs and desires for a biblical, Christ-like foundation. It just doesn't happen. So in this instance, it may look like hate and destruction and discrimination that the Supreme Court and the government is pushing down. But it's really not. And myself as a Christ follower, and for those of you who are Christ followers, can look at this situation and think, no, this is love. This is the Supreme Court showing love to those kids in the way that it's appointed for a man and a woman to marry, and it's appointed for a man and a woman to lead up a family. It's not appointed for a man to lead a family, or a woman and a woman to lead a family. I don't want children affected negatively if it can be helped. I want them taken care of. I want them to have a Christ-like upbringing. And you cannot, I can't emphasize that enough, you cannot raise up a child in a Christ-like fashion if you are 2 men or 2 women doing that. You can't do it. I'm not saying God can't help the child. I'm not saying God won't be found by the child. I'm saying they can't bring up the child. It may be in a roundabout way that God will reveal himself to the child and maybe to the parents. It may be in a different fashion than what we traditionally or typically see. But I can't be living a life that is in disregards to God's word, in complete disobedience to God's word, and expect God to work in and through me and be shown to those around me. It won't happen. It won't happen. I mean, Jesus tells his disciples and the crowds that are following him to deny themselves if they want to follow him, to deny themselves, deny their pleasures, deny what makes them happy, to deny their life, everything that they know and do, deny that. Take up your cross, which is heavy, ugly, burdensome, not a sign of joy and happiness, but a sign of death, torture, and pain. Take up your cross and follow me. That's what Jesus says. That's what Jesus says. That's what he expects. And if we do anything less than that, he doesn't want it. He doesn't want it. That's not the message that's usually shared too often. But this is his desire. His desire is for us to forget about ourselves, and who we are, and to follow him. Look to him. Change our lives. Let him do a work in us. Paul tells us that we are no longer the old self. A new creation has been born. We throw off the old and we put on the new. That's what he wants. That's what he desires. So as we continue to think about these topics and our nation, and that we should be in prayer for our nation and for the foundations that we stand on, that they would be Christ-like in all that we do and say, and all the laws that we pass, and the guidance that is given. As always, if you like what you hear, I'd appreciate you letting me know that. If you have any comments, concerns, questions, send them my way. If something I've said is not right, not accurate, please let me know so I can tweak it a little bit. Or I would love to double down on the topic and make sure that my point is crystal clear. So again, I appreciate all you guys who tune in. I love doing this, and it's just a way for me to help get my thoughts, my opinions out to you guys, to help you understand who I am. And I would, again, love to understand who you are as well. So I'll see you next time.